I quit the carnivore diet. Yes, I know this is probably not news to a lot of you, but for people who haven't been following for the past little while, I have stopped doing the carnivore diet. And I get tons and tons of questions every single day on Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, all of these different things asking me why I quit the carnivore diet. So in today's video, we're gonna break down exactly why I did quit the carnivore diet, my thoughts around the carnivore diet now, and how this recent shift has affected my training, my nutrition, my sleep, and my overall lifestyle. Let's do it. So before we get into why I quit the carnivore diet, I think we could go back to why I started doing a low carbohydrate diet in the first place. Ever since I was a kid, I've always been interested in how nutrition would affect my training performance, and I've always been trying to sort of optimize that. From the ages 13 to around 19 when I stopped doing the carnivore diet, I always really had a low carb approach. And initially it was for the mental clarity benefits, the digestion benefits, as well as the endurance performance benefits that I was finding when I was actually playing sports and actually doing some sort of athletic endeavor. Then as I progressed into my actual bodybuilding training, which seemed to kind of take over the athletic pursuits and endeavors that I was going into, that kind of just carried over, and the switch from keto or low carb approach to carnivore was more so out of ease and simplicity rather than feeling like it was a necessity or I was having any issues with low carb alone. I found a lot of research suggesting that having high amounts of protein and good quality sources of protein would benefit my performance, which again was supported by carnivore with the organ meats, the red meats, and all the healthy fats associated with it. So how did I feel when I was doing keto or even carnivore? I honestly felt great. My skin was clear, my digestion was good, my training performance was improving week over week, and pretty much everything was on track. For the first 5 years or so, I made great progress. Sure, you could see over time that I built some muscle and my strength improved pretty significantly. And with all of those improvements that I was making in the gym and out of the gym, I was also able to maintain a really lean physique without even really needing to try that hard. And before we go further, there's nothing that I have against these particular ways of eating a low carb or carnivore approach. It just wasn't fitting to my particular goals at the time. So let's talk about sleep. I've made videos in the past talking about how my sleep was affected from chronic dieting, how my sleep quality deteriorated over the time of being in a caloric deficit or an energy deficit and just being at such a low body fat percentage. The truth is, I didn't sleep well when I was so lean because my calories were too low in general. I use a sleep ring to track pretty much every single night's sleep, and although this isn't 100% accurate, like any device isn't really 100% accurate, I found that through the different stages of my dieting where I've adjusted my nutrition, the main difference between sleep quality was the actual amount of food that I was consuming overall. After adding carbs back into your diet, a lot of people find that their sleep improves a ton, but that really just wasn't the case for me. When I increased my calories and was still on a carnivore-esque diet and came out of that extreme chronic dieting state, I found that my sleep improved from 4, 5, 6 hours of sleep consistently to around 7 or 8 hours of sleep with great quality, not waking up interrupted or anything like that. So I think that the negative sleep quality wasn't necessarily a side effect of the carnivore diet or the low carb approach, but instead a side effect of just being excessively lean for so long. So now let's talk calories and weight gain. This is the number one factor why I stopped doing the carnivore diet. I simply couldn't eat enough fats and proteins to get myself out of that chronically dieted state where I was sub 6% body fat for multiple years. Now this is individual, but eating so much protein was too satiating for me, and adding in more fats into my diet would have caused digestive issues, especially if it was in the form of rendered fats like tallow or anything of that sort. At the end of my carnivore diet, I got up to around 220 to 240 grams of protein per day, and at a 1-to-1 ratio, so it's 240 grams of protein, 240 grams of fat, and I really couldn't add any more real foods into my diet to assist me in getting to that caloric range that I need to actually be in to gain weight. As an athlete, or a human I guess, you essentially have two energy sources, either carbs or fats, and being that I was doing carnivore diet, I didn't have the option of increasing my carbohydrates. So the only energy source that I could increase was fats, and protein is not really an effective energy source. The issue that I had was that as soon as I increased my fats past a certain point of like 220 to 240 grams per day, which is already a ton for my body weight, I was having digestive issues and it was pretty uncomfortable to live that way. Immediately after I shifted from doing a carnivore approach to doing a higher carbohydrate approach, I actually ended up losing weight. And after speaking to my coach about it, he said theoretically it could have been because of a stress response or a decrease in stress overall in my body that caused me to shed excess weight, even though I didn't have much excess weight to lose. So even though I increased my carbs, which tend to hold more water, they do hold more water, I actually dropped in body weight just because of the stress decrease overall. Increased strength or overall training performance is one of the main benefits touted by people who promote higher carbohydrate diets. But the thing is, I didn't really notice any massive jumps or increases in my strengths or pumps or anything like that. That wasn't directly associated with my increase in overall calories throughout my day. So had I kept increasing my food with protein and fats, I can't say that it was necessarily the carbohydrates being put back into my diet that allowed for those strength improvements, those pump improvements, the muscular endurance improvements, all these different things. So if you're able to sustain a caloric surplus or an energy surplus that allows for progression within the gym, then carnivore diet could be completely sustainable for you, but that just wasn't the case for me. So to wrap this video up, I figured it'd be helpful to you guys as viewers to have a little bit of a pros and cons list as to why I personally, just from my anecdotal experience, feel like there's certain benefits to a carnivore diet as opposed to a higher carbohydrate diet, and certain benefits to a higher carbohydrate diet as opposed to a carnivore diet. So pros to the carnivore diet. I will say that it's extremely easy for me to lose weight or get lean using a carnivore diet. And I've heard both sides of the spectrum when it comes to satiety on the carnivore diet. Like, you can definitely overeat just eating fats and protein. So don't get it twisted. You're going to gain fat or weight overall if you're eating too much food in general. No matter whether you're consuming high amounts of protein, high amounts of fats, or high amounts of carbs, if you're overeating, you're going to gain weight. And if you're under eating, you're going to lose weight. So for many, the pro is that they feel more satiated on a carnivore diet, but for other people, it just doesn't work for them. Another pro to the carnivore diet that I've noticed personally is that my mental clarity is extremely sharp. Throughout my days, I'm able to really dial in and focus on tasks and not have to eat for hours. Now, again, like I've said, this is different for different people. Some people function much better mentally with having a carbohydrate source in their diet. So all of these things are just my personal experience. Third pro of the carnivore diet that I could think of for myself was simplicity. I didn't have to think about picking out different carbohydrate sources, picking out different vegetable sources. All I'd have to do is grab some steak, some eggs, some fish, whatever it is, throw it in the pan, cook it, and it's ready to go. So I would say that it saved me a lot of time, not only through the actual physical cooking perspective, but from a mental perspective of thinking of how I'm gonna fit in each carb source, each protein source, each vegetable, all of these different things. So that's probably the last pro that I would say for the carnivore diet. Cons for me, what I found was that it was extremely difficult for me to eat enough food to gain weight, which I needed to in order to actually build muscle. If you're in a position where you're in a healthy state and not overly lean or overly fat, it can be a great diet to allow you to actually build muscle with the right amount of calories. Another con that I would say is that going out to eat or going to social events can be pretty limiting when you're trying to avoid things like seed oils, or you're trying to avoid other types of carbohydrate sources. Like, you can pretty much cross Italian off the list if you're doing a carnivore diet, because 90% of Italian food is carb based. I don't really have many other cons. Last con, and the rest of the pros and cons list has really been more specific to me, but this is for a lot of other people, is that the carnivore diet can get extremely monotonous. You're eating the same foods every single day. You only have a select amount of foods, and there's really not anywhere to expand past that. You can only eat so much steak, so much eggs, so much organ meats, whatever it is. So if you're someone that likes large amounts of varieties, enjoys, having some vegetables or having some fruits or having even some carbohydrate sources, any of this different stuff, then the carnivore diet may not be for you. Wrapping up the video there. Unfortunately, for those of you guys who wanted me to hate all the carnivore dieters, that's just not the case, but I will say that it wasn't right for my goals at the time, and now that I've adjusted, I found another way of eating that works for me, and the carnivore diet still may work for thousands, millions of other people. It's just not right for me at this time. With all that being said, if you guys did enjoy the video, if you enjoyed this different style video where I'm just kind of sitting down and talking, then make sure to let me know down in the comments down below. leave a like, drop a comment, share this with a friend, subscribe to the channel if you're new. You can turn on post notifications if you'd like to see a little bit more of my super round carb face now. And we'll catch you in the next one. Peace.